everybody. I'm Marianne Katsidis, and this is the Heart-Led Changemaker podcast. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone where it felt so juicy and inspired that it left you feeling energized and ready to take on the world? There have been countless times I wished I could have recorded conversations like that because it felt criminal that no one else got to hear or experience that feeling. Those conversations ignite something inside of you because you visualize a new way to connect with others and sometimes even a new world. This show will provide you with ways to stay focused on the future, some food for thought, new ideas and concepts, a way to create abundance ethically, a showcase of those already doing the work and succeeding, and a sense of connection. Being a change maker can be very lonely, so this will serve as a community for heart-led warriors. Sit back and let this high vibe, heartfelt conversation light you up. Today's guest is the Peace Dealer. I've been following him for a number of years and he is a change maker if ever I've seen one. He is a cosmic counselor specializing in astropsychology, and with over 8 years of experience, the Peace Dealer has personally conducted several thousand consultations from individuals all around the world. Welcome, the Peace Dealer. It is an absolute delight to have you on the show today, and I can't wait to dive deep into all things astrology and human behavior.
Thanks for having me. Very honored. We just entered Leo season, so I think this is very appropriate.
It is very appropriate. So let's start things off with self-imposed cages. One of the things I really adore about what you share is that you explain and encourage your audience to step into their full potential and expression. Why is that so important to you?
I love that question. I realized that I think, my whole life, which I guess we can say that for everybody, but definitely, being challenged with stifled expression. I don't think I was ever in a position where I didn't really feel like I wasn't able to truly express myself compared to people who may not really even have the opportunity to just do certain things we consider normal. But I definitely, I'm sure many people can relate with, didn't always feel like I could be who I truly was without having to hold back or without having to filter myself. And it could feel like, you're white noise in a room where you're kind of conditioned or influenced by society around you to be yourself, but not like that, or not any way that is out of, conformity. So, a huge breakthrough for me was in creating this channel and having a platform where I could really express my 100% unadulterated thoughts and stuff I really believed in. And I've been studying and, just gaining this receptivity of people who are, so touched and influenced and helped by my insights. To me at the time, everyone who I would talk to about astrology or just certain things that I'd be into, I would be able to find friends who I'm into, certain stuff that is a bit popular, but certain things that related to me at the core, I always felt like I wasn't really able to share without being seen as weird or without having to, sit and listen to a lecture about why this philosophically isn't good or bad. And creating this platform was the first time in my life in my mid-20s that I realized, wow, what I have to say is valued. I'm not just some, I could be a little crazy, but I'm not just some weirdo that's just making stuff up and there's, it actually is helping people. And that's what really kind of inspired me to just really, push that, not even just message, but that consciousness that, you are here for a reason. I like to think that, people lead themselves into the situations they're in for a reason. But I also noticed how, especially when I started, it's easy to hear people apologize for sharing their ideas. Like, oh, I'm sorry I shared this, or, when they really are themselves. And I just wanted to be a source and influence and platform where, we just kind of promote that and to just return the focus back to who we really are. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because it's coming back full circle in that a large challenge just dealing with society is society's obsession with image, and how, like, people care more about what looks the part versus actually being the part. So I can, like, put on a suit and dress really well, and people would choose me even though I'm lying to them, I'm basically manipulating them, but they'll overlook the person who, doesn't look the part, but they have the substance that people are looking for. So it's always mind-blowing. Yeah.
Yes, and that connects to what I was listening to you say this morning on your channel, on your Instagram channel, and it fits Leo season, right? Because Leo season is, typically it is about the showman side of you, but it's about using that with depth. That's what I seem to have learned, and what I'm learning from you as well is it's not about, looking like shit. It's not about, not being your best self, but it's being a real version of you in every aspect. It's not putting on masks, whether you're having to go to work and there is a dress code there is a way to bring your expression into focus, right? You don't have to be a robot. And I really love what you were saying this morning about when, as soon as you go home, you put your pajamas on and you're in a completely different outfit. And I don't know about you, but I've worked in corporate environments where I've seen people in the corporate workplace and they look one way. But if you've ever had a casual day or you've seen them outside of that, you're like, who the hell is this? Like, you wouldn't even pick that they even look like that, or they are even like that at all. Like, you're just like, what is going on? And I would say that is what you're relating to as well, right?
No, absolutely. And I love that you said it like that too, because that's one of the biggest challenges in showing up authentically. I know when I started doing what I do, there was that voice in my head that's like, this isn't good enough, or, you gotta do it like this or do it like that. And I always took that voice and then challenged it back. Like, okay, if this isn't good enough, I'm still going to show up as myself. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't have as much followers, or if I'm acting more goofy than I'm supposed to be, I'm still going to show up. Even if I don't feel like I'm worthy enough, still going to give the best that I can. And that's definitely been a huge breakthrough in just the embracing.
Yeah, I mean, even like, all the paradigms, especially for women, we've been sort of taught to have to look a certain way, all the beauty standards and all that have come through because people just want to make money. It's not actually because they actually think it looks good. It's part of an agenda where it's a money-making machine, right? There is so much that's ingrained, and you've got not just our own self stuff, but we've got like genetic coding that's inbuilt that we have to sort of look a certain way. I'm letting all my grey hair grow out, and my mum is having full conniptions. Like, every time I see her, she is like, can you please dye your hair back blonde? And I just say, no, this is like part of my rebellion. And also intuitively, this is just what I feel like I need to do right now. Maybe I will dye it back someday, but as it stands, that's not what I want. But, I think not just women, men as well, we are carrying our ancestors' programming that also has to be broken, right?
I have chills when you said that, because I think every generation goes through that, but I think our span of generation is like the transition of all transitions, where we're taking in so much like traditional, thoughts, expectations, gender roles since before the 50s, and we're the one who are like completely. I love how you said rebelling, because it's literally just being authentic. To rebel now is to just be your authentic self, which is just wow. And I'm so glad you mentioned the whole notion of, how this conditioning has affected women. It affects men and women, but it's interesting to see how, women are starting to turn that tide and overcome that like never before. And another thing I wanted to mention is I'm so grateful for Leo as a vibration, because before, the only planet that I have progressed in the Leo Leo now is Mercury, which is like, my personal main pad. And ever since like the last decade, while it was still going through Cancer, I didn't realize until it broke through Leo a couple years ago. But like, even if you caught me 10, 20 years ago, like I was shy, I was timid, I would never project my voice, even subtly. Like when I would go out, I would always kind of speak a little softer, thinking I'm speaking loud enough. As soon as Mercury went into Leo, like I say hi to people outside now, like, hey, how you doing? Like I understand and respect so much how it charges courage. It definitely brings this onus to desire to socialize and to really express oneself. So I'm looking forward to subsequent, as I get more into the Leo energy. I've been waiting for that, and it's really fun.
Yeah, me too. I've been waiting for it as well. It feels like forever. That's probably the most Leo statement ever, is I've been waiting for Leo season. We like it to be about us. So
everyone's been saying during this Cancer.
Like, we just wait all year to come back to us. Yeah, trying to wait patiently.
I appreciate what you said when we spoke on the call. I wanted to wait until we recorded to speak more on that, because I think a lot of it is you being a fire sign, especially Leo. But I think the reason why, like, you specifically mentioned the water sign transits, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, these are the signs that end each part of the zodiac. And I think as a collective, these seasons force us to really feel our emotions and everything we've been suppressing, and the type of society that we're in, which conditions us. It's not really like, I don't think anyone's forcing us, but I don't think we're really encouraged to really sit with our emotions. We just have to wake up the next day, go, move on. And so these water sign seasons come through like, oh, you forgot about me? You thought you could just, you know what I'm saying? And we have to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an Aqua rising, so I don't really like to feel the feelings, and I've had a lot of trauma in my past, so even more so, I don't really enjoy feeling the feelings. I like to just get on with it, and being big, bold, and being in that Leo energy is really helpful. But when we cycle into the water signs, it's so emotional, and you don't have much choice. There's no escape. I feel like I'm in an ocean, like in the glass case of emotion. When you think of Anchorman, when he's like crying in the phone, that's what it feels like every time. But yeah, I'm glad we've got some fire energy coming through, because it's just felt a little bit challenging. But the mystical moon messages are transmissions from the divine. That's what you do. That's what you share. And even though your content is really relatable and very easy to digest, I feel like there is so much in each of those downloads that I need to listen to those like at least three times to integrate properly. And I just wondered, from your perspective, have other people commented about that and had that same experience as well?
Absolutely. And that's one thing that was one series that really helped me grow closer to my audience and all, everyone who supports me, like yourself. Before, what I was doing was just the regular horoscopes, like, okay, this week the sun is going to be through here. And then I just had the idea, everyone's kind of doing that. Let me focus more on the moon. And then it's, and which made it so much more intimate, because it's just, every other day we're coming through. And instead of really framing it like an astrologer, I'm starting to see myself more as a magician. And, magic and magician is so misunderstood. I don't think you can talk to 10 people and at least 3 people will tell you the same thing. Like, everyone's going to have their own misunderstanding or understanding of it. But I look at each one of those magic moon messages as a magic spell, as, really stating and bringing in the energy. But I love that you asked that question, because there's so much I say and channel condensed there that it really is designed to listen to at least 3 to 7 times. You're always going to gain more layers, because Instagram has really allowed me only 15 minutes. So I have to get as much in as I can. Thankfully, I can do the extendeds, but I just really love that about that, because it allows me to not only break down the transits relative to the moon and a lot more personally what, the feeling is, but it allows me to teach astrology and to always kind of like, still break down the mechanics and the synthesis. So the way it's designed is you can listen to any of them like a time capsule and learn astrology just by, binge watching as much as you can, gaining retrospect.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm one of those people who binges because I really honor and respect what you do. So I make sure that I'm actually listening. I'm not distracting myself by doing something else. So I'm like, okay, concentrate, just take this in, because it is a spell. It feels like a spell. And I hadn't, until you just said that, I actually didn't know that that's the feeling that I was experiencing, but it is. The fact that the only other person that I've seen channel like that is Esther Hicks. And that is someone that I've got goosebumps, right? That is someone that I hold in the highest, like that's like the peak for me, right? So you're the closest to that I've seen that can channel in that way.
Huge compliment. Thank you so much.
That's truth, right? That's truth talk, and that's why we're here. But that's why I like you so much. But the fact that you are talking, and sometimes like 45 minutes, even an hour, I've got your subscription so I can listen to the extended versions, but the fact that you are able to channel like that so consistently, and the content is so solid. There's no, you're not just gas bagging, you're not just talking shit. It is like with intention, and it is so powerful each and every time. There's no one's better than the other. They're all awesome. And you're right, there is so much education in every single transmission, and that's why it is a transmission, right? It's just so amazing. And that is why I wanted you to come on the show, because you are incredible, and the people that I know and my audience who don't know you absolutely need to.
And I appreciate you so much. I had chills too when you mentioned Esther, and it's amazing because one thing that you just said right now that set off a light bulb is a lot of of course, the magic nature of the message is, an intention sent with the message. So the information is stimulating your brain, but we all move forward with that intention just to be more successful, to be more limitless. But what I realized is like the materialist, reductionist nature of science, post the Dark Ages, which just made so much more. Roman Catholicism had their mishap with magic and these crafts, and then the scientific community came through the Enlightenment period, and that led to materialist reductionism, and it took the magic away from reminding us that everything is alive, everything has a soul, and we forget that we're on a living rock that has a consciousness like we do. We forget the planets in our solar system have consciousnesses. They all have souls. And, this just kind of helps remind each of us that we're going through these transits together with these energies, where it's interactive. Instead of just looking at them like a rock or a gas planet, it's alive, like you and I are alive. And that just adds so much more dimensions to the experience.
Absolutely. And it is bizarre, isn't it bizarre that we are on a rock, like we are living the way that we are. It is just freaky. And my brain hurts thinking about what our future is going to look like, because no one really knows. Everyone's got their own theories about it, but really we don't know, and it feels uncomfortable. I don't know how you feel, but it does feel a bit uncomfortable not knowing. We can definitely connect to the energy and that beautiful 5 and 6D consciousness, which is available to everybody if they want. But the physical, not knowing what the physical is going to look like, is challenging. Do you find that challenging for yourself?
Oh, yeah. I had chills when you asked that. And I have a question for you after this, but it's such a good question you asked, because that has also been the hugest lesson that reluctantly, like I've learned this lesson when I started, but I reluctantly never wanted to follow it until recently. I just accepted that that's the way. And when I first started this out, like it was so hyper intellectual. Like I didn't even have trust in my intuition, because it's like I have to, make sure it's logical. And I was just so obsessed with knowing and with figuring out information that I didn't realize, I had to accept that I have to be okay with not knowing how certain things, may play out relative to what I think they may. And every single time I've surrendered, that's where the wisdom unfolds, and like everything. And I'll still always trip back up and try and control things and try and like manipulate them. But when I realized that it's the other way around. Like, I'm the instrument co-creating with the universe. It now engenders why we all need to be one, because each of us have our own puzzle piece of information, and the universe will never let us try and figure it all out on our own, as much as we may try. But the question that I wanted to ask you, which triggered when you said, a lot of people don't know, I think the generation you're a part of, specifically like the decade you were born and maybe a little bit more and after, I think y'all are so important because, we're all important, right? But what you've witnessed in your lifetime is very legendary, because I can hear about it being born in 1990 and I've seen elements of this, but I feel like y'all have seen the full range, where you have like the Pluto Leos in the late 40s, 50s with these gender normative social constructs and just more integrity and pride to be authentic, to really have integrity. Not to say that they didn't have their sins, but it's just amazing to see that contrast opposite now to people who are so much more unhinged, so much more detached. I don't want to be the old head to be like, oh, people complain about stuff, because there's so much stuff from the new generation we're learning as well. But like, to see that contrast, what is it like? Like, I want to be careful with how I ask the question, because I don't want to set it up to say that everything's gone worse, but because everything happens in cycles, right? But like, I can only imagine like what it's like to really see that full range, the technology raise, but then, so much stuff kind of like fluctuate, rise, fall, get better, get worse. It's just a lot of respect for y'all who've experienced.
Well, I was born in 76, not in the 40s, so we won't make me too old. But you're right, it is. There are so many components that are really exciting when it comes to the technology side of things. Like, being able to communicate like this is amazing. The fact that I can have this epic conversation with you, that didn't exist when I was a kid. And, we had, I was there when CDs came out for the first time. And I remember when my dad started his computer business, and that was when Apple first released their first Mac. So I was there then. But some of the main things that bother me is not so much the technology side of things. It's the way people are relating that really bothers me. So when I look at when I was in the early 20s and even in the teens, I would go out to a nightclub. Try and picture this. I'd go out to a nightclub and you would have to talk to the people that were there, because otherwise you'd have to wait until the next week before you get to see them again. There was no stalking on social media. You didn't know. And it was so funny because I watch people a lot, but it would get to 11 o'clock and you'd see the men in the room knowing they only had 2 hours to lock someone down before the club closed, right? And you'd see I'd say, okay, it's feeding time at the zoo, and you'd see a lot of action then. They'd been waiting hours, sussing who they wanted to approach out, and then as time got closer, bang, it was like hunting season, and it was so awesome. But my niece, who's 18, she will never know what that experience is like, because that generation, your generation, you don't know what that is like, because that is not how we're operating now. And the waiting for someone to call you on the phone and talking for hours, and they had to call your house, having that freedom to read and create and to play without having a device in your hand all the time and worrying and making sure you're sharing so people can see that insight. That didn't exist then, and it felt easier, a lot easier, I have to say. And my heart feels sad because I'm in my 40s, I'm single, and I am sad for those days. I go out, but people don't talk to each other. Like, I've even seen the young ones, like groups of 20-year-old men sitting together and at the same place, a group of gorgeous gorgeous, stunning, incredibly stunning 20-year-old females, and they don't even speak in person, because with the dating side of things, you've got apps where you can swipe. There's no risk, right? You don't have to put yourself out there. Back in the day, you did. You had to, yeah, and
no, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
yeah, and even worse, right? Culturally, in America, right? One of the things I love about American people and the culture there is that if you're in a bar sitting by yourself, someone will come and speak to you. In Australia, and more so in some of the less fancy sort of cities in Australia, you could be sitting there all day and no one speaks to you except for the waiter. You won't have people approach you. And your culture is completely different. That is not the case. If someone sees that you're attractive, they'll just approach you and they'll talk to you. However it happens.
I didn't know that in Australia they don't do that. Okay.
No, they don't.
Even back then, or is it just a new thing?
Back then they did more so. Not as much, definitely not as much, but more so because there was a time and a place for it. So they knew, okay, if you're in a club, you're with your girlfriends, there's no man around, you would know that you're single, so that they would do that there. But generally, if you're in a restaurant, if you're walking down the street, they wouldn't. Whereas in America, you've got a completely different culture and a different mindset about that. And so all of those things, that's what I've seen from beginning to end is, I have people asking me all the time, have you met someone? Are you seeing anyone? And I'm like, well, I don't want to be on the apps because that's
I don't like it either. It's just a waste of time. But I love everything you said. I want to touch on a few things because that was just such a joy to kind of relive too. And that's why I specifically meant, like, once again, like, so glad you mentioned 76, like kind of coming into the 80s and then also a bit before, after the 60s. I feel that specific time period where you see that range. And I didn't realize how, well, first of all, before I say that, it's interesting too, because you have a lot of these women now who, one, they don't want to be approached because they can do it online, but then you have the few who are wondering why they're not getting approached. And men are not as courageous as they did before because they're worrying about, like, oh, do I have to worry about this? Outside of just like not being courageous enough, just so much more logistics. But I didn't realize how much I took for granted those period. I think that being born in 1990, I was like right at the sweet spot right before, because after high school, entering college, like that was 2008, 2009, 2010 were like the last few years kind of within that decade where you would go out. It would be 2 a.m. Like, people did have social media, but we weren't on it like we were now. And exactly as you said, the club is about to close. And back then I was still a lot more timid, a lot more shy. You know what I mean? Like, in retrospect, I'm so grateful I had that experience though, even though a lot of it was filled with a lot of nerves. Like, what do I say? How do I do this? You know what I mean? Like, it's something I'll never really experience again like then, where now, of course, like you said, like everyone's just on their phones. Like, it's so much harder to really talk to people because a lot of people are just so much more closed off, so much more detached, versus back then, you, like you said, you literally had to put yourself out there. And what I love about that is you're seeing this in entertainment, where, you know, the TikTok algorithms that would blow people up overnight, a lot of the degrading of music relative to your generation versus ours is a lot of the greatest music that we hear, people had to go out and pass CDs. People had to actually promote their music. Now you can try and do everything online and you have millions of followers, but only 5 people are showing up to your concert. So it's like forcing people to go back to the drawing board and actually socialize, network, connect. And, you know, I feel like if the internet crashed, it'd be the greatest thing that ever happened to us, because we have to start from scratch again and like actually
100%. I mean, sometimes I pray for that. Even recently, like I literally hide my phone in the house because if I see it, I'm distracted by it. The energy pisses me off. But I'm in marketing. You know, that's my job. I'm on socials all the time. So of course I'm having that kind of a reaction. I need that disconnect. And I'm a creative, I paint. So it is finding that balance. And it is useful because you are able to connect with people, but you are so right. The people who are following you, like if you're not truly being authentic, your authentic self, and you're just, you know, putting on a show, there are people following you because they're feeding on your energy, aren't they? They're not really engaging with you. They're actually just taking from you. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Like they're developing parasocial relationships.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I feel like another thing that we may overlook is given how much so much has changed. Because if you think about it, we've had to process so much change in such a short amount of time. And I know personally for me, I definitely took a very extended hermit phase because I didn't really know how I wanted to express myself. So that would make socializing very stressful because it's like I'm fighting myself just to communicate with other people. And, you know, I needed that time inside to really rediscover who I am. And now that I have, I'm so much more ready to you know, share myself again. Now I you know, I can have more authenticity expressing myself. And I feel like, you know, it's something we've all gone through, but many people may not recognize that that's what it is. They might feel like something's wrong with them. They may not realize this is them awakening. This is them like redefining how they see themselves, which, you know, is just very interesting when you look at the psychology of social signs versus individual signs. Knowing that you're born with the sun in Leo, it gave me a newfound respect for Leos, for Libras, because you guys stay outside. Like this is how you help others develop their voice and their courage through these challenges. So yeah, it's really
I think it is. Yeah. So, I mean, you often share about letting go and connecting with your higher self to guide your true actions. Has that been your approach from the beginning?
Absolutely. Although in the beginning, I didn't call it that and I didn't know that's what it was. So in the beginning, I just recklessly moved forward in a direction. Like, I don't know exactly what this is, but I know I'm supposed to do this. And that's what just led me to that's how I started reading astrology, because this was like 2011, 2012 when I got my chart read and I was going to UTEP. So I spoke to hundreds of people on campus like, hey, when's your birthday? What's your sign? And just to read their chart live in person. And a lot of the men were not receptive at all. They're like, that's for the woman. So it's really women that I was talking to, and they would think I'm hitting on them. And then 3 minutes later, I'm talking about their chart, like, wow, that's accurate. And it's like, I was just completely obsessed with just figuring this out. But it was, the more I was guided on this path, the biggest thing I had to learn was to get out my own way. And a lot of that was, even till recently, it was me accepting that the more trust I have in myself, the more I allow this higher facet of my being to guide me. And it always comes through. And that just has required so much surrender and, you know, trying not to figure out or trying not to feel like I have to have all the knowledge. You know?
Yeah. And especially because you're channeling as well. So how can you?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like opening the fridge and you see the light on, but you're trying to see the light turn off, but you can't if the fridge is closed. So
exactly right. Yeah. And that's, I guess, that kind of surrender takes practice. I feel like that when I'm painting, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. And for someone like myself, that feels incredibly challenging because, you know, I've got something in my mind about what I'd like it to look like, but that's not always how it happens. And sometimes just when I think everything's falling apart, it comes together. And I know you play music as well. You create some amazing sounds. Do you find that it's easier channeling when it comes to the music side of things, or more so when you're speaking?
Oh, I love that question. They've definitely been intertwined. So before I even ever went live on YouTube, I was performing in underground hip hop shows, maybe in front of 2 people, 5 people, if I'm lucky, 20, 40. And once again, you know what I mean? Like in the moment, it feels like you're struggling to like make it. But back now it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm so glad I had this experience. Like I had to really learn how to command stage presence, really share my ideas in front of real people. You know what I'm saying? Really, not every show is going to go the way you want it, right? But just really learning a lot of having a lot of these experiences. And I know having that background in writing lyrics and performing naturally helped me just perform live. Of course, going live on YouTube, now it kind of helped each other. Performing helped me perform live on YouTube. Performing live on YouTube has made it so now if I ever perform music now, I'm way better. Like I can't wait till the next time I do a stage show. Like I would have no nerves. But as far as like the creative process, my best songs, my best lives have been purely channeled. Like the songs will be written in less than 5 minutes. It literally feels like something wrote it through me, and the words just come out like water. And I really do love that feeling, that experience. It's so aligned.
And I love your skits. Your skits are so amazing as well, because you just take the absolute piss out of all of the zodiacs. You're not biased towards any, and it just, I mean, that humor is such a great way of relating, but even that feels channeled as well, in the way that you put that together. So you can see how both the music side of things and what you're doing, the transmissions and stuff that you're doing on YouTube, how that relates. And I love that so much. My guides communicate to me often if I haven't been listening, they usually start playing me a song in my head, or I'll hear a song over and over. Usually the lyrics are a specific message for me. And I've got a guide even who's a musician that has passed away. And that, I feel like that's such an incredible gift to have. And when you lean into that spiritual part of you, and when you trust that what you are receiving, no matter what you're doing, whether it's no matter what creative activity or anything else, for example, you could be gardening and you're expressing yourself in that way, but most people don't even realize they are channeling and are connecting in that way. But I feel like the more, the 3D muggles out there, the ones who are still so resistant, I wish that they spent a little bit more time cultivating that side of things. And I think slowly they are. One by one, they're activating. You'll hear people saying, oh, I tried meditating the other day. And you're like, that's really good. That feels like 700 billion years away from where I started. But at least that's something, there's a compassion and a kindness, because that journey from that first point of trying those spiritual things to where we are in the now, there's a lot that goes on between then and now. There's so many personal deaths. There's like soul deaths, ego deaths that happen within you to get to this point where we feel strong enough to say, I've got guides that communicate to me. I channel these transmissions and so forth. Don't you think?
And I love that you're asking that, because everything you said about your guides was very beautiful, because that was another huge thing that blocked that I got in my own way when I first started. I took too logical an approach. Like I've always believed in angels, but I didn't believe people were really calling on angels. Like it was hard for me to understand in a real sense, where I felt like it was just figurative. You know what I mean? Like I still to this day believe that some people who draw angel cards, they're not really calling on these angels, but I didn't think that they were real. I didn't think it was real to be able to call them. I thought people were just making it up. And, I felt like the process had to be a certain way. Like if it's not this physical, then I'm not going to believe it. So everything that you said about your guys was very amazing, because it was a realization that I've been making more and more every day, where a lot of things I thought were just my thoughts were my guides, were me communicating with these angels, and realizing how we've always been in communication with them. We just may not be aware that that's what we're doing. And that's what I've been learning to embrace a lot more too.
And that's even one of the reasons why I started this show, because I would find myself in conversation with incredible people, and the conversation was so epic that I was sad that no one else got to hear the conversations, and it was because both of us, me and the other person, whether they were awake or not, they were channeling, and I'd know that. I wouldn't necessarily say that to them if they weren't ready. But for close friends of mine and other people that I meet who are spiritual, they would know that both of us were channeling in that moment. And it was, it's just too good. And I guess that's what we're doing today as well. Our conversation is very free. It's not orchestrated in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think that would have worked with the conversation with you, but it certainly wouldn't work for me either. I'm such a curious person. I want to know. I want to get in the other person's brain and say, hey, how did you even get to that point? What is it? What led to that? And it excites me. I think, our world, if everyone was a little bit more curious and stopped and slowed down and actually connected in that way, and that comes back to our conversation earlier, we would be in a completely different world and hopefully that happens soon, right?
And I love that you asked that, because it's definitely happening in such a subtle way that I don't think people's foundation is crumbling. So if you haven't built a foundation that's solid, which, everyone who has been guided to live authentically, which is what I love about, this journey. It's very impartial. It's not like, this person's more spiritual, I'm going to bless them more. It's all based on our actions and the work we've done to really not forsake ourselves. So, there's that aspect of really tapping in, but I'm just really mind blown because I think like a large portion of how personally we're kind of reaching this state of revolution and breaking through, and it's taking us back to ourselves, right? But to kind of circle back to how we started, that's another huge reason why I always like to promote or to inspire and encourage people to really just speak your raw, authentic voice, because I truly do believe that there's nothing that we can't do. The average individual who might feel like they have everything set against them, and by returning to that original voice, by returning to who you may have felt you're not allowed to be. That's one thing that hurt my heart too. It's like certain people feel like they're not allowed to be themselves. And to just have that platform to where people can truly speak their true thoughts, say things they can't say to other people. I think that's the first step to just recognizing and awakening to the fact that you are the creator of your reality.
And even the way that you've explained that is so solid, and I agree 100%. But even to add to that is even trusting that you expressing yourself in that way, and whatever you're made up of and whatever your gifts are, and everyone is unique. Obviously, everyone has a unique template. That is enough. That you don't need all the bells and whistles. You don't need all the things. That is enough, and that you're going to be accepted in that way. And I think a lot of people don't trust that they will. That's what's preventing them from doing that. They don't feel safe that they're going to be accepted to express themselves, and they don't feel safe to show themselves in their entirety. And it is challenging when our world is, superficial as anything. It can feel a bit challenging, or a lot challenging, to break those cycles, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I love that you said that everything is changing, hopefully sooner. I think the nature of how this is, once again, like for those of you you've challenged yourself to where that's really what it comes down to. Everyone in the world has had the decision, because it made me rethink what awakening meant. I thought awakening meant you just activate superpowers and like you suddenly figure everything out. And I'm learning to accept it as a perpetual unlayering of that onion, right? Awakening to deeper facets of yourself. Yeah, there's that moment where you awaken deeper to who you are. But I realized that path of awakening is everyone is hit with the decision. Are you going to act as who you are, or who other people want you to be, who you're not? And people make that decision, whether due to because of money, because of this excuse, because of image. I'm going to be who I'm not, versus the people who say, okay, whether I lose money, whether I lose this relationship, I'm still going to act authentically. And sometimes we make it into, you have to know this, you have to know this. And I learned, you don't have to know anything. You have to move into the direction that is most authentic to you, because that is your path. This is what we're here for. And I've learned that I feel like people awakening to that more so is what's leading to, which is another thing that was amazing to realize post 2020. A lot more people are awake than we may give credit for. They just may not be on social media, sharing that, but a lot more people are hip to what's happening than it may seem. And that
Okay, so that I've got like three things I want to say about what you just said. So first of all, so this is where our countries are a bit different. America, coming from someone in Australia, the what it seems like, because they might be hidden and I don't know where they are, but it feels like in Australia we don't have as many people spiritually leading the way. It feels very much like the people that I know in Australia who are like-minded, who are awake, we're following people in America. I don't feel like there are a lot of leaders here in Australia doing that, and that makes us sad. So that's the first one. I don't know if you know that, but that's actually that's the reality of what we're experiencing here.
I would say that's similar to America here too, but it's nice to know that relative to what's occurred, because I would have thought it was a little bit different,
No, it feels like the desert here. So it can feel very isolating. So that's why technology like this is really helpful, and social media too, because I can listen to you, even though I don't have those resources necessarily in Australia. There are lots of good people doing lots of good things, and that's great, but it's not the same. It doesn't feel as epic. It doesn't feel as strong, and you're a larger country, and maybe that's part of it. So that's something that I wanted to share with you. The other thing that you said about the spiritual awakening, I saw someone on Instagram the other day being asked, when did you have your spiritual awakening? And she answered, I have my spiritual awakening every day. And it is so true. The start of it, I know for me, I know when that happened, but it does feel like it is happening every day. Every day feels like a completely different reset.
You learn something deeper about yourself.
Totally, you do. Yeah. When you look at relationships and what you foresee for the future with relationships between the masculine and the feminines out there, what do you see?
Oh my God, I love that. Personally, like the best thing I think to ever happen culturally are these gender wars, because you're seeing for the first time ever in human history, men and women have an outlet to speak about things that they've been going through for ages. Like we've never had this before, where, podcast of men can say all sorts of foul things about women and vice versa. Women about men, women about women, men about men. And this is just allowing all this to be out there so people can vent it. And the only thing that I dislike about that is the deception. It gives people the impression that this is what men think about women, right? When you see these red pill communities that are like, oh, women are this, women are that. And when you see these other communities that are like, men are this, men are that, it gives you the impression that, okay, this is what majority of men think. But in reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. You have men that love women. You have women that love men. And I think these frictions are forcing people to come to that realization that what you're hearing on the internet, what you're seeing on TV is not really the way it is in real life. I know they're trying to make it seem like that, and everyone has examples of that, but I think that the past 2 decades have allowed sincere individuals, because you still have a lot of people getting together and falling in love, but I think that the narrative is starting to bring into account this deeper awakening that is changing forever through the new generation with technology, the way people are communicating. I think we've gone so far immersive into, being reliant on apps that it's gonna force people to go back the old fashioned way, just kind of like a cycle or whatnot. And I think we're gonna see so much more honest conversation. I think coming into 2025, especially, in fact, now that the North Node is in Aries and the South Node's in Libra, this next 2 years and after, we're going to see a completely brand new, for better and for worse, method of dating, method of connecting, and especially with identity politics and people kind of, coming out of the whole gender war. It's like how you said before, people are coming back to how to relate with each other, because that's really what screwed up. People really just stopped respecting how to relate with each other, and a lot of compounded, communication issues, I think, will, through the challenge, through going through the difficulty, is going to be dealt with. And I think so many people who've had like for those who are sincere, because you have people who obviously have their ulterior motives, but for people who are sincere about being in love, being with the right people, thousands of these people have done so much work on themselves. And now I feel like, especially with these nodes, the work you've done on yourself is going to align you with friends and lovers and people who are more than perfect for you because you did the work. You know what I mean? And that, I think, is going to slowly but surely just reflect in our society and overcome these false narratives. And what I wanted to say real quick before, in light of how you do have certain people who are just not as awake or just kind of leading that charge, I feel like it's a theory, right? And it's something that I would love your insight on too, because I've always been like and I think this is me being a bit naive because I see the greatness in people, but I've never wanted to accept that certain people are just asleep and have no soul. And my theory is just like everyone is like, a majority of people are in the closet. They're just terrified about sharing their experiences because they don't want to be judged. So you have a lot of people who want to, but they don't take that step like us to put themselves out there. But under the right settings, you know what I mean? They definitely open up. And that'll be interesting to see more people come out the spiritual closet.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Okay, so my brain is hurting because there's so many things that I want to say back to you. So the first part is I agree. I think that there is a part in everybody that we would classify as asleep, let's say. That's a term, but I think they do know there is work to be done. I think there are people in relationships and in work situations and in all different experiences that they know that something has to change and their head is in the sand. There is a want for cognitive dissonance. Absolutely. They don't want to see the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. They want to dismiss the truth. They just want to be told what to do and when. And I think those people is part of the reason why everything feels so heavy and why it feels like everything is taking so long. I think those shifts for them, I agree with what you said earlier. It is subtle and it is slowly moving. Like I'm even hearing conversations with, surprisingly, people are saying random things like, you know, they're talking about aliens now and they're just accepting that. Whereas if I had said that last year that aliens exist, they would have thought I was a fucking lunatic, you know, but it's in the news, so it's okay now, you know, those kinds of things. And I think that that's hilarious to me. And you hear people saying about crystals and, you know, slowly but surely, you know, they're sort of starting to accept some things. So I think, you know, I would classify them as asleep, but they're not. They do know they're not happy and they do know that they're fearful and they just don't know what step to take first. And they know, I actually believe they know that there is hard work to do and they just don't want to do it. They know that it is going to be terrifying, right?
And that's the way you worded it was so well said, because that's really people's huge block. And it's easy for me to understand because I mean, I've always, I guess, been weird or different, you know what I mean? So like certain things that the normal person would reasonably so like not want to put themselves out there and make a fool of themselves, I'm actively wanting to make a fool of myself, just to challenge myself, just to get rid of the fear, just to dive into curiosity. I don't want anything to get in the way of my pursuit of truth. But you know, that's the false presupposition a lot of people live under, in that they feel like they can't really express themselves because they're going to be judged. They feel like they're going to lose that job, they're going to lose respect from, you know, their relationships, their friends. And that furthermore is the main message that I just want to remind people. No matter what we've been deluded to believe, there is absolutely nothing in this life that you cannot achieve through your own merit. You do not need a single thing outside of yourself. And we've been conditioned to believe the opposite. So, you know, this forces you to recognize who is in and what is in your life that does not allow you to express who you truly are. And most people don't want to give up the world. They want to give up their soul to gain the world. It's a huge bittersweet realization, and only they can decide, you know, when it's their time to choose themselves. But until then, all we can do is lead by example.
The image that I get is they're like cats on a curtain, you know, they're like 2 meters off the ground. They're just hanging on, you know, for dear life. But it's like, just get down. Like, it's safe here. It's going to be okay. You're going to survive. Just get down. You know, please fucking get down. Get down. I know, but your message before about the fact that, you know, people are going to come together, the people who have done the work, it's like the most hopeful thing I've heard all week. The people who have done the work are going to find their people on a romantic level, and even with friendships and from a work perspective. That feels really exciting to me. And I know the audience that I have will find a lot of comfort in that statement, because it can be easy just feeling a bit like you're the only one. And especially if, like you were mentioning, you know, you said that you've always sort of felt weird and sort of out there. I've felt like that too. And I think all of us who are leading the way have felt like that. But now even more so, because there's so much contrast. Before, it wasn't so noticeable. It feels really extreme at the moment. And so when you find someone that kind of gets you or thinks, you know, along, you know, similar lines and has similar philosophies and values, then you kind of just want to hold on to them and not let them run away. Not let them run away.
In I think the past few years, like ever since I turned 30, I didn't realize, first of all, I didn't realize, you know, a major part of me being single was just pushing it away. Like I just didn't want to socialize. I didn't necessarily, but then I didn't realize like what I was afraid to do was to value myself, to draw those boundaries and be square on what I wouldn't accept. Because the bittersweet realization was, if I really was 100%, you know, it's true to that, I felt there would be no one left to like, it's almost like I'd be asking for too much for somebody to, you know, I'd not abide by my demands, but to just, and then I realized that's the biggest blessing. Rejection is spirit's protection. And the lies, especially when you take into account the conditioning on women who are told you have until this time to find love or it's over for you. Lies, complete lies. It really helped me release all that and realize at the perfect time you will enter this relationship, and all you have to do is just know. The law of assumption is really just help me accept the power that we hold. Like you just have to live in that state and know and really understand there's nothing you have to do because you're already perfect the way you are. And this alignment just allows miracles to happen. And that's been the greatest comfort in knowing that you can never be too late to find love. You can never be too late to be with that right person. Everything is going to happen the way you have created it. And it just makes me honor the parts of ourselves we can't see that are already guiding us and know what we're feeling and going through. And it's just so awesome.
It is so awesome. And you don't know what's around the corner. You don't know what's coming. But again, that's part of the fun of working and co-creating with the universe, right? And with the guides and your higher self, is just trusting that you already mapped this out anyway. And the more you just go along the path willingly, the faster all of those things are going to come to fruition. But also just trusting in the timing. Sometimes it's you, sometimes it's the other person as well. Just knowing that it will happen as it's supposed to, and not reflecting on time. And time is just an illusion, right? It's just a construct. Everyone feels like, oh no, I've wasted so much time today. And it's like, well, that's okay, because you've got tomorrow anyway. So it doesn't really matter. And if you don't, you don't. What's the difference? But it's that pressure that we put ourselves on. And I think social media really pushes our buttons in attaching to time, don't you think? Like, even though it's like the biggest time drain, being on there is wasting so much time when you could be doing so many other things, like being in nature or creating or whatever. But it's making you feel, because you're seeing everyone else and some people even doing similar things to you, it starts to feel like you've wasted so much time. When you see people ahead of you, which no one is.
Right. Amen.
It feels like you've wasted time, because you're spending time thinking about all the things you could have done in that relationship or in this circumstance or on that day or last week, you know, and I feel like there's a discipline that needs to come in the way that we're looking at that side of things. Do you find that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I use the internet as it is my number one greatest procrastination tool. Like I deliberately just use it to waste time, and just to kind of like, every time I know I have something to do, just to blank my mind out, distract myself. That's been my go-to. I've even isolated, like I'm just going on apps I don't even need to go on. It's just a reflex at this point. So now I've kind of finished that phase, and now I'm coming back to like going towards everything I procrastinated on, asking myself, what was I running away from? Obviously the success that comes with it. And it's just, I love how you said that, because it really is an illusion where we feel like, and that's the biggest thing that I think has impacted everyone, but specifically these young people now feel like, and I mean, we've all as kids, but I think these people more now with social media feel like they're supposed to be super mega successful before 30. And because they don't have this, because they don't have that, self-esteem just completely shot, not realizing, no, you gotta take your time with this life. You know what I mean? Like, definitely. And ever since I personally stopped feeling like I had to rush and put myself on a time limit, I now enjoying the journey. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would have rolled my eyes. I would have been like, take me to the destination. But you have to enjoy the journey. I don't care about that. Take me to the destination. Now I'm like, okay, this is what's up. I can like really chill, let God take the driver's seat. If I have to drive, I can. And it's fun now. I'm enjoying it. Like it's something just beginning.
Yeah, and again, he's like Esther, she often talks about just get in the canoe and just go down the river and just let your higher self take you where you're supposed to be. It's not, you can't control that, and you can't even control the speed. Sometimes it's a bit faster, sometimes it's slower, but you'll just be in observe mode and just be with your intuitive action. And when you're working from intuitive action, that's where your success comes. That's where you yield those opportunities. And you might even just be planting seeds in those moments, but that they will eventually bloom. You will get the fruits of all the things that you're doing, but it might be, I mean, look at Dolores Cannon, for example. You know, her work was, people are only just getting into it now. You know, that was from the 70s. That's not even like a recent thing. People are obsessing over her work and the things that she was sharing and saying. I mean, she went, you know, quite a few centuries of having no acknowledgement whatsoever, and now she's blown up.
And Nikola Tesla, I have chills with you saying that, because that was another huge like acceptance where it's like from the start in Gecko, I never did this for fame or to be notarized, right? But I've fully accepted the whole concept where it's like, yeah, like we may never get recognized for what we do, but I feel so strongly that a lot of what we're doing is for the new generation, for people who aren't even born yet, are about to be born, who are going to look at what we do like, you guys existed? Wow. This is what you guys were doing. So that definitely keeps me going. And especially the current support, that was the most humbling part about this, because experiencing that really squared home that, you know, the random person who I've never met messaging me how my Magic Blue message really touched their lives is worth more any money you can pay me. There's no amount of money you can pay. And you know, that used to be a cliche statement to me, but it's really felt, and it definitely helps me feel content. I've learned to embrace quality over quantity and to just really take my time with the
and
process.
You'll never know how your interactions will help someone or change someone, whether it's a smile, whether it's a comment, whether it's a like, whether it's some sort of acknowledgement, engagement, replying to someone's email. I mean, when I reached out to you, I truly thought, look, I've got nothing to lose. You know, he might say no, he might not, but you agreed straight away. You booked in straight away. And I told you, I've shared this with you already, but I screamed the house down, because to me, that was massive. You know, the fact that you were actually willing to engage with me in that way. And you didn't know that was what was happening on this end, but it is, you know, just even that. But what I love about you saying about the work that we're doing is not for us. It's for, you know, the people who are going to live beyond us. The kids who are born post 2020, I actually feel like, and I've got the goosebumps, I feel like they know that we're the ones. Because when I interact, I don't know if you've interacted with any that are you know, super little like that, but I have. They see you from the get-go. They have this, there is something otherworldly about these kids that even the ones who are 4 or 5, it's not the same. They are operating on a completely different model, and it is mind-blowing.
Full body chills by it. This is even when you said the way they look, like the way they talk too, it's like they're all born at a God level. I spoke to, and I'm so glad you referenced those born after 2020. I haven't had the privilege of like really interacting with one yet, but I spoke to my friend's son. I think he's like 10. I don't even think he's older than 10. And young Scorpio King, just he's talking to me about stuff that I'm teaching people in their 30s, 40s about spirituality. He's talking to me about it casually. Hey, I want to ask you a few questions. No, I'm going to tell you a few things. Just like, okay, I see. Like they're in their energy. They know what's up, and I'm just so honored to be able to serve and just lead by example too. Because I feel like they're going to innovate science. They're going to bring a lot of this to life, and I'm very excited. What you said was so perfect. Like they know, and they're able to really like walk on and see through what's really happening at such a young age, which is just wow.
They do, and they want to spend time with you because they know that you're switched on and that you're seeing things in a really unique way. But what I love about them is how much they encourage play, and that play part is so critical to being tapped in spiritually. That's where it is. That's where the juice is, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I love that you said that during Leo season now, as a Leo yourself. That's definitely something I think me having like the Capricorn heavy energy, I'm not going to blame it on a sign, but the way I am, and I realize my mom is kind of like this too, where she just, to this day, she gets up early, goes to her pediatric practice, comes home late. But like personally, I won't let myself go on vacations. I won't let myself have fun until I reach this unattainable peak of success. And then I can go out. And my really good friend is like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you should probably have fun and see. She said when she started having fun, stuff started opening up so much for her. And it's just that whole concept of just, because like personally with me, I joke with myself all day. I do have that whole philosophy of like just keeping it chill. But one thing I want to challenge myself more to do is actively just, go on a vacation, really just stimulate and have fun again. Even the way I started my channel was just doing the craziest skits that I can think of. And I want to go back to that because that was when I was having the most fun, just being as crazy as possible. I put out some of my best material. So.
And it is, and it's so amusing, and it's sort of like the balance between the light and the dark, right? Because not that any of your work is dark, but some of those transmissions are a lot to take, so they feel a little bit heavier. They're powerful and they're divine, but they're a little bit heavier. But those skits are like full in the light, they're like extreme. That's like all the floodlights on. You're just playing, and you're still teaching anyway while you're doing that. So you should. I find a lot of amusement, and laughing is a direct connection to source anyway. So you're encouraging people to tap in. Maybe you didn't even realize you're activating people like that.
Yeah, that was another thing. Once again, and that's why I feel like, and I didn't know at the period. At some point when I had started, I didn't even know what success looked like. So I didn't know that I could do what I'm doing full time. I didn't really know what to expect, but I can easily say like, I think the greatest thing I manifested with this is you all, everyone who supported me, because I really didn't know I had an effect on people like that. I didn't think that like what I had to say was that important, especially when everyone around you is like, acting like, oh, you're weird, or this isn't true, or this doesn't mean anything. So just kind of seeing that effect, seeing that impact, it was both humbling and once again worth more than money can buy, because it's just wow. It just gives you that necessary perspective, and the feedback is very amazing, because I think some people that's one thing I always hear a lot, like, I'm sure you get this a lot, or I'm sure you already know this, but no, I don't know until you let me know that that's what you felt. And it always makes my day, every single time.
That is so awesome. Look, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. There would be endless conversation. For sure it would, but I'll leave you be. But in the meantime, how can my audience connect with you? How can they find you?
Well, I am on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter at The Peace Dealer. My email is thepeacedealer@gmail.com. And you can get a consultation or a recorded report. And I also have a team, clearsightconsulting.net. We are just launching a pay-per-call program. So for people who want to call in our line, and if you, instead of a consultation, you want to talk per minute, we've just recently launched that. So we're going to be moving forward with that. And the whole goal really is to just, basically what we were saying, build community, really make these meet up in person, and just network and just share the love and inspiration.
It's so good. I'm so excited for you. And, I think the world of of you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I've adored this conversation. I'll be having this conversation on repeat. I'll be playing it back because it's just too good. And I'm sure my audience will feel like that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm most definitely going to invite you on my channel. So
I would love that. That would be so cool. Thank you.